We are all masters of our own destiny. A better future depends on all of us lending a hand. Your hand. My hand. You say these words in front of a crowd of over 100 people. Some are victims, others are perpetrators. All have faced some sort of pain. And your role in all of this is to bring these two groups of people, united under one nation, to reconcile with one another. Nelson Mandela faced this circumstance. The room he was in was the inaugural meeting of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in 1996, which took place in South Africa shortly after the end of apartheid. The nation's people had faced severe discrimination, around 7,000 political deaths, and 20,000 individuals affected by various crimes. Mandela, alongside Desmond Tutu, could have chosen the easier route. Listen exclusively to the victims and leave the perpetrators to the justice system. But they decided not to. Why? Because they understood that reconciliation isn't just about punishing the guilty, but rather it's about healing everyone, including those who have wronged others. They created space for the public to listen, confess wrongdoings, and forgive their fellow citizens. Mandela's approach to reconciliation wasn't solely focused on addressing past wrongs. Rather, it was about finding the right balance to move forward. Kind of like composing or creating the perfect dish. When I'm cooking a dish and I add an ingredient in and probably take a taste on a spoon, I'll often say something to myself like, something's missing from this. Has anyone else ever done this? It's not always easy to identify what that missing thing is, just as it's not easy to pinpoint what is missing when it comes to forgiveness. In both cases, the process requires a lot of ample patience, careful precision, and the right components. Just as Mandela's approach acknowledged both suffering on both sides, as well as a willingness to heal. To me, these right components come in the form of Quaker SPICES, specifically community and simplicity. When I lay out the situation before me, adding these values into the mix, the outcome is not just an understanding of the past, but a path towards inner peace. The analogy of cooking helps me understand that community can transform individuals and groups of people, much like how a well-composed dish combines diverse ingredients into something satisfying and harmonious. In the same way that adding the wrong ingredients into a dish can definitely mess up the taste, forgiveness requires a delicate balance of acceptance and release. This idea of letting go, of surrendering to what is beyond my control, first took place for me on my initial move-in day at George School. I was in the meeting house with my family in the sweltering August heat when I was told to surrender myself to this new experience I was embarking on. Now, at first, that word caught me off guard because I had only associated it with historical battles or defeating your foes. However, over time, particularly in a Buddhism class, I began to realize that surrendering doesn't mean losing control, but rather acknowledging how little control we truly have over certain areas of our lives. Now, this worried me at first, the lack of control that I had over things like my upbringing, or who I learned alongside, or even whether I'll be here tomorrow. And although this may worry others, to me, processing this felt so freeing, allowing me to loosen my grasp on life. I cannot control the ideas or the actions of others, but I can control whether I bottle my feelings up or let them go. As I explored this idea further, I realized that even ancient philosophers grappled with this concept. Socrates, for example, who I learned about in a philosophy class, encountered a time where he too had conflicting ideas about what it meant to forgive, and confronted the emotions around forgiving someone, even when it's hard. He states, "We ought to forgive them, the pretenders to philosophy, their ambition, and not feel angry." Through this statement, he acknowledges both the falsehood of these so-called philosophers and yet gives them grace, saying to relinquish judgments and following up with, "and not be angry," as a sense of releasing those emotions. Simplicity as a spice resonates most with the idea of letting go of complex emotions and being fully present in the current moment. It reminds us that nothing is permanent, and that no feeling or bad test grade or even a failed relationship will last forever, as the papers will disintegrate and the memories will vanish. Instead of sticking our heads in a past that is immovable and permanent, we should instead aim towards simplifying the complex emotions in our head and moving more in a direction of positive change. However, forgiveness doesn't just exist in isolation. While simplicity helped me process emotions within my own life and within my own head, community is where it truly finds its purpose. I experienced this firsthand during my time at the Quaker Youth Leadership Conference, which I've attended for all 4 years of my high school tenure. Here, I've gotten to commune with many Quaker students from fellow Quaker schools all across the world, and we are all connected by one common thread. A clear example of when community came together for me was when I decided to host a presentation on neurodiversity. I was newly diagnosed at the time and felt like this was the perfect opportunity to connect with others who faced the same struggles. What started out as a very structured conversation soon developed into a fully blossomed safe space where we were able to share what neurodiversity looked like in our lives, both the good and the bad. This group, comprised of students from 3 schools, began to mention times where they felt socially or academically they wished they had more support from their peers or faculty. Together, we empathized and came up with responses and solutions to take back to our fellow institutions. My time at the Quaker Youth Leadership Conference these 4 years has been life-changing and has provided me with many lifelong memories. But it's also shown me that despite our slight differences, struggles, or contrasts, that if we accept them and embrace them, that will lead to greater civility and empathy. While my experiences at the Quaker Youth Leadership Conference showed me the importance of community and fostering understanding, history also provides many examples of leaders who pushed past surface-level unity. Take, for instance, Bayard Rustin. Bayard Rustin was a Quaker, a gay man, and an advisor to MLK. He was a main organizer of the March on Washington and was a race relations secretary for the Fellowship of Reconciliation, which was a group of pacifists who used nonviolent approaches to amend world issues. On the topic of the assassination of Martin Luther King, Bayard wrote, "We are indeed house divided, but the division between race and race, class and class, will not be dissolved by massive infusions of brotherly sentiment. The division is not the result of bad sentiment and therefore will not be healed by rhetoric." He follows up by criticizing talk of brotherhood and tolerance as causing contempt for many people of color in the nation at a time like this. Rustin's idea that real healing and progress aren't accomplished through rhetoric alone reinforces that if the concept of forgiveness is thrown around without depth or true resolve, it won't result in real unity or reconciliation. When we casually just go up to someone and say, "I forgive you," as a succinct response, without any forethought or consideration, we run the risk of reinforcing the cracks within our communities instead of repairing them. Rustin's words remind me that Forgiveness is about real, intentional action. This is why I see forgiveness as a practice, a daily decision that not only influences self-growth, but also communal growth. So let's try it out sometime. Sprinkle a little simplicity in your day, whether that be taking a deep breath, or decluttering your room, or even just letting go of something small. Add a pinch of peace, being conscious of the weight of your words on others. And most importantly, be generous with community, as that's what makes self-growth and communal growth possible. Bringing together these spices will open doors and create new and unexpected bonds that were very confusing to begin with, but will soon be in a second nature. Something new for a change. Something that, when done right, leaves you with the sweet, sweet taste of fulfilling, healing, true forgiveness. Thank you.